And try. Okay, good. But can you hear it? Actually, make him a pants first. Andy? No, we're muted. You're muted.
Not anymore.
No, good. We're not muted. Hi, Andy. Can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Oh, good. It's okay. Good. That's great. Thanks, Andy.
You guys are in the middle of getting ready, so I won't distract you. Let me know when you want to talk a little bit about the meeting itself. And just want to make sure of a couple of things.
Yeah, let's get our opening screen up and then, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you ready? And you're recording right now?
Yeah, we've got YouTube set up and the recording is set up.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll mute myself and turn off the video until we're ready to go. Are you going to open up? Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
Okay. I want to welcome our participants and give our applicant team an opportunity to do a sound check. If you're part of our applicant team and you'd like to do a sound check, please raise your hand within the Zoom and I'll get a prompt over to you. Okay, I have a Teresa Hughes. I'm going to go ahead and get a prompt over to you. If you answer that prompt, you can go ahead and give your sound a try.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. And if you can go ahead and keep yourself muted until it's appropriate, that would be helpful.
Oh, okay. And then when I want to speak, will it be, do I just click?
There won't be a prompt every time. You'll be able to unmute.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like we also have Jeff Johnson.
Yes, I'm the project manager with the applicant.
Okay. And it seems like your sound is working fine, so thank you.
Will video be going on this?
Excuse me?
Will video be going on this?
Not, you mean cameras will not be enabled. Cameras are only enabled for city staff.
Okay. Is this
on this
Kimberly?
meeting. Yes, it is.
Oh, hi, Kimberly. Jeff Johnson.
Hi.
Hey. Yeah, so I have a number of people showing up. So I think the organized presentation is going to be me, Kirk Mckinley, and Christine Talbot. But I want to make sure that the team has an opportunity to speak as necessary.
Okay.
And I can be calling on them, but that's what I would like to do.
I do see them in the participants so far.
Okay, can I give you everybody on my team that I think might, so Christine and Kirk are presenting, but there's others that I would, do they just raise their hand? How does that work?
Yeah, we need anyone that is going to do a sound check or that might be speaking to raise their hand, because until they answer a prompt, I can't enable someone's sound without them answering a prompt.
Okay. Okay, can I give you that list of names then?
Let's just have them raise their hand within the participants list and we'll go through one at a time.
Okay, thank you.
It looked like I had a hand. Yep, Christine has her hand up. Let's go ahead and get that one.
Hello.
Christine, you want to give it your sound a try?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? How about now?
I can hear you, but it's a little quiet.
Okay, let me turn it up. I think I had turned it way down. So is that better?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Okay, and next up, Kirk McKinley.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. This is Kirk McKinley.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so if we've already got our sound check done and, those of you on our applicant team, go ahead and keep yourself muted for the most part until it's time to speak. And I'm going to go ahead and lower those hands.
Kimberly, if you don't mind, I do want to make sure that Zach Matley, James Jensen, Dave Brown, Chris McKellar, Scott Myers, and maybe one Sherry Hoffman are also in the house.
I don't see any of those names on our attendance list so far.
Okay.
But we still have 15 more minutes before it starts.
Yeah.
I do have a raised hand from Tina Wallace.
Oh, Tina's on our team as well. Yes.
Okay. Tina, I'm going to get a prompt over to you. If you want to try your sound.
This is Tina Wallace. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're a little quiet.
Is that a little better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, Tina, if you mute yourself, then I won't have to mute you and we won't have to go through the prompt if it's appropriate for you to speak during the meeting.
Perfect. I'll just mute myself until we're ready to go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, did you say Sherry Hoffman was part of your applicant team?
Yes, she is.
Okay. Sherry, I'll go ahead and get you a prompt. And if you answer the prompt, we can check your sound.
Hi, Sherry's here.
Okay, sounds good, Sherry. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Susie, I'm sending your prompt.
Hi there. Doing a testing 1, 2, 3. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, but it was a little quiet at first.
Oh, that's because I stepped away to turn off that light in the back.
Okay.
I think it might have been better with the light on though. I look like I'm glowing. Oh, not any better.
Susie, is Rob Sprinkle going to be a panelist this evening?
Yeah, Rob and Gabe will both be panelists. So go ahead and elevate them now and ask that they stay on mute when they're not responding, please.
Okay, Rob, I'm sending a prompt for you.
Kimberly, I'm turning on my video and audio for sound check, video check.
Sounds good, looks good. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
I think we might have one more member of our applicant team that I can see in the participants list that says James Jensen, Adobe Associates. James, if you'd like to do a sound check, please raise your hand within Zoom and I'll get a prompt over to you.
Testing.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks. If you want to go ahead and keep yourself muted until it's appropriate for you to speak, then we won't have to prompt every time. Thank you. And it looks like Zach Matley, are you a part of our applicant team? I'll go ahead and get a prompt over to you.
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you.
Okay, your sound sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks.
Gabe, I'm going to get a prompt over to you right now to answer. And then we have Chris McKellar raising his hand. Are you a member of the applicant team, Chris?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And it seems like your sound is working just fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to call to order the December 15th, 2021 special zoning administrator meeting. My name is Andy Gustafson. I will serve as zoning administrator this evening. This meeting is a virtual meeting because of COVID and health officer orders here in the county of Sonoma to conduct these meetings via remote Zoom or other methods. This meeting will be conducted as any other in-person meeting. We will go through this agenda tonight. We have one item. You will be called upon and you'll be given opportunity to participate, offer your comments. This meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed. Or I should say it is being live streamed and is recorded so that you can go back and review it. The meeting is live streamed at https://www.youtube.com/City of Santa Rosa. Tonight's meeting, if there is a final decision made here, whether the project's approved or denied or approved with conditions, it can be appealed. And it's we have a 10-day calendar day appeal period, which is starting starts tomorrow, and the 10th day is December 27th. So if the outcome of this meeting is a matter you wish to appeal, you will be able to do so by that date. Recording secretary, if I can ask you to scroll down the agenda on the screen for everyone. So we have one item 2.1. The address is 1385 West College Avenue. And the project planner is Susie Murray. And Susie, if you would present your project recommendation.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second here to share my screen. Can you guys confirm that you can see that?
Yeah, while you do that, Susie, let me also add here just a little bit about how we proceed as you set up. The project planner will give the presentation on the project for everyone to observe. The project team will have opportunity after Susie's presentation to comment, add more information. And then after that, I'll open the public hearing part of the meeting where members of the public who wish to comment may do so. And we would ask that you raise your hand, or if you're participating by telephone, press *9, and the recording secretary will recognize you. Okay, so with that, Susie, why don't you do your presentation? Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Zoning Administrator. The project before you is the Aviar Apartments. It's located at 1385 West College Avenue. The project proposes 135 low-income rental units and 1 unit that's designated, the 136th unit, which is designated for an on-site manager. That represents 22% of the low-income units. And I want to say that we haven't completely determined that these are low-income units. They could be very low, low, or moderate. So the full project description, it proposes a 6-structure multifamily housing campus. And here you go, 136 units, 1 reserved for an on-site manager. This will be comprised of a mix of 2- and 3-bedroom apartments and a lot of associated amenities, including trash enclosure, community areas, a community garden. They have a teen gathering area, which I thought was very creative, very nice to see, actually. The required entitlements, it's a design review. This is a reduced review authority item. The project was required to go to the design review board pursuant to our resilient city measures in the zoning code for concept design review, which they did in August. And I'll talk about a little bit more about that as we get into the presentation. And in doing so, they are entitled to come to the zoning administrator for design review, which is the entitlement before you this evening. Here's an aerial view of the site, just to give you some idea of the location and the neighborhood context. It's got residential uses to the north, west, and south, and commercial uses to the east. It's also got Lehman Elementary and Jennings Park are above those. There's just a couple of residential parcels above it to the north. So the site is vegetated with a lot of walnut trees, a couple of oak trees, and various shrubbery. The structures that you see in the image shown have since been destroyed. I will say that the applicant did point out that they were extremely careful not to take any trees down with the demolition of those structures, but they needed to take down the structures to address the homeless problems that they were having there. It's adjacent. You can see that long strip along the left side, on the west side of the parcel, by an either 75 or 80-foot PG&E easement. I've seen it referenced both ways. And then on the east side, or the right side of the project site, you see Cowell Road. For clarification, this is a public street, not a private street, as it is. There is a sign out there that says a private street. So I think it's worth noting that we have not just the project history, but the site history. In July of 2020, the zoning administrator approved a housing project, 117 unit multifamily housing complex. That is not the project that is before you this evening. This project was introduced to the city in June of 2021. The applicant met all their pre-application meeting requirements between June and August with a meeting with staff, a neighborhood meeting, and concept design review. And I said I'd mention this later. At that meeting, they had unanimous support of the project, which is really represented in some of the public correspondence that we received as well. In August of 2021, we received the formal applications for this project. And as a council directive, because it's a 100% affordable housing project, it has been received expedited processing as a priority project. In September, the mayor and I were both invited to a neighborhood hosted meeting. I'd like to point out that my notes from that meeting and the agenda, it was a very organized meeting. Their agenda and my notes are both included in the public correspondence. And then worth mentioning, I think, is in October, the applicant opted to do a second neighborhood meeting in Spanish when one of the neighbors along Manhattan pointed out that many of the neighbors in that area are Spanish speaking. So we did hold a second neighborhood meeting, which was not required. They opted to do it. And we had only one member of the community show up. So the general plan identifies this property, or it's assigned medium high density land use designation, and that allows housing from 8 to 13 units per acre. The zoning is R330, which is consistent with that general plan land use designation, and it's also within the Station Area Combining District. It's within the North Station Area Priority Development Area as established by the Association of Bay Area Governments. And I also would like to point out that they have confirmed that the project is consistent with Plan Bay Area. So the North Station Area specific plan and the general plan have a lot of very similar goals and policies. First and foremost, I like to point out it meets the housing needs of all of Santa Rosa residents. We need housing right now. It also maintains a diversity of housing stock and puts an increased intensity toward near commercial uses, within walking distance of schools, within walking distance of bus stops, et cetera. And I think I mentioned already that it received priority processing as a council directive, one of our city programs and policies to expedite affordable housing. The project has also received, it's been approved for a density bonus. It has the potential for 100% supplemental density bonus pursuant to our zoning code, our city policies, which could have resulted, I'd like everybody to understand that could have resulted in 236 units, 100 more than the applicant is proposing. And my slide says here that the state mandates up to 35%. And I think that's also called out in our zoning code. But I think that since that section of our zoning code was written, I think that the state now mandates up to a 50% density bonus. So I want to correct that now. So again, yeah, they're well under the radar there. Along with density bonus, the applicant is allowed to request several incentives, concessions, or waivers to development standards. So I just want to talk about some of the project specific or the calculations for the density bonus. First of all, the state also mandates that all calculations, including base density, is rounded up. So in all other cases, our zoning code requires us to round down or, use the standard rules of rounding at 0.5, you go up. But with this case, if it were 3.01 acres, or I'm sorry, if it called 117.1 base units, we would round up to 118. So there are 3.92 acres there. One of the pieces of late correspondence that was added to the website was an actual, it was a survey document, which I didn't have or I was unable to locate previously. So that was loaded to support this 3.92 acres. When you multiply 3.92 times 30, you round up to 118 units. So there would have been, they could have put in an extra 42 units. That's based on the 35%. So that line is really in error now. I couldn't update it. It was too late in the day when I found out. And so, but really the point here is that they're asking for less than 16% density increase with 18 density bonus units. In terms of the development standards, the minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet with 75% lot coverage. That lot coverage talks about the actual structures, not parking areas or pathways. And then, there are setbacks, parking, the required parking for a multifamily housing development in this area is 1 space per unit or 136 spaces. So the site plan in this case includes more than what's required. We have conditioned the project to provide 1 parking sticker or placard for each unit and reserve 25 spaces for visitor parking. Those visitor spaces will have a 48-hour maximum time limit. Cars that are parked there for more than 48 hours will be cited and or towed. I would like to say, looking at all these development standards, the applicant has designed a project that conforms to all of our development standards, which is the first time I've seen this with a project with density bonus. And I've processed quite a few of them. So here's the proposed site plan, which shows the engineer's site plan, or the civil engineer's site plan. This is part of the applicant's presentation as well, and I'm going to defer to them to explain it. Here is the proposed landscape, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that either. I think it's much better if the project team does, the design team talks about it. But I wanted to point out that there is on the right side, which is actually the south entrance to the property, and that is off West College. And then up in the left-hand corner is actually on the east side of the project, where the site will take access off Cowell Lane. Here's a rendering as seen from West College. I took this from an earlier plan, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you see the renderings from the applicant's presentation. And again, I'm going to defer to the applicant's presentation in terms of the proposed elevations, but this will give you a precursor to that. There was some concern, which I raised in the public comments about the height of the building, the shadowing effect. And this graphic here demonstrates that they really won't have a shadowing effect on the properties to the west or to the properties to the north. The project is supported by several design guidelines. Again, we have, diversity in housing, putting single family and multifamily next to each other. This is also a nice transition from commercial to single family. It puts eyes on the sidewalk, which is something that we want for public safety. Let's see, I don't need to read every one of these. You can. With their landscaping design, they've designed a site that isn't dominating. And yeah, it's with their parking, they're separated from those single family uses by the parking plus the 75 or 80-foot easement to the west. So we have received several public comments, which I alluded to earlier. The top two by leaps and bounds were parking and circulation. So parking, I've addressed it. Our requirements are by design, lower parking requirements to encourage people to use public transportation, bicycles, etc. They have exceeded our parking requirement, and the project has been conditioned to protect some of those parking spaces so that they do have visitor parking or overflow parking. Circulation comments, too much traffic in the area, cars drive too fast, and access for safety trucks. And I have asked Gabe Osborne, our Director of Engineering Services, to chime in and help me describe this in engineering language, because I think he'll be clearer. So Gabe, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. Thank you, Susie. Good evening, Mr. Zoning Administrator and members of the public. As Susie mentioned, Gabe Osborne, Deputy Director of Development Services. Cal Lane in this particular situation is a fairly unique roadway. It is old. It was dedicated to the city many years ago in the 60s as a public street, and it has had limited development on it. As you can see from the detail here, the frontage improvements are mainly contained along the frontage of the Safeway shopping center parcel. And on the detail on the right, you can really see what the existing configuration is and what the future width of that roadway will be with this development. So we currently have about 20 feet to generally what they're referring to as the center line of the roadway. There'll be an additional 18 feet of paved surfaces added on the other side of the other side of the road, which is going to result in 38 feet curb to curb distance. And we are not going to have parking on the east side of the street. It is currently restricted for parking on that side, but parking will show on the west side as part of the development. That will ultimately result in roughly around 30 feet available for those travel lanes. And one of the things that we look at in this particular situation is the use of existing properties on that roadway. The street standards in this particular case, this isn't a street that circulates through or is designed to circulate through. It is predominantly serving residential units. And typically a street of that nature isn't well defined in general plans or specific plans. It's typically, the standards cover it, and it's typically our minor street standard, which this is consistent with. That typically does allow parking on both sides. The removal of parking in this particular case will provide a little more flexibility for the movement of vehicles entering that driveway for Safeway. The use on that site, typically if there are operational issues on the street, those are typically remedied by that use controlling their entry point. And what I mean by that is the driveway approach. So as vehicles are approaching on a minor street, in some situations, the approach can be widened, the radius on that approach can change to allow the operational nature of those vehicles a smoother path into the site. So that is typically how uses address needs that exist on their site. We typically do not expand or contract the street to account for a use that exists in a commercial location. That's simply the street is designed for the general use. And like, as I mentioned, no circulation benefit. So the minor street standard does apply in this particular case. And as I mentioned before, with the absence of the parking, that is still allocating 30 feet of available space for the operation into that site. So hopefully that provides a better picture on what ultimately that street is going to look like. I will hand this back to Susie at this point, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that there may be regarding anything engineering related.
Thank you very much, Gabe. So more public comments. Cal Road, I mentioned this earlier. There's some question as to whether or not it's public or private. It was a city posted sign back in 1994, full transparency, that was erected. We don't really know why. We've confirmed it is in fact a public street. building height, privacy, shadowing, and views. As far as the privacy and as far as the shadowing, I showed you an exhibit before that shows that the neighboring properties shouldn't be affected by the shadowing or by shadowing. Views, when you put multifamily housing near single family housing where your height limits are taller, you do affect views. However, I will say that the views for the people to the west, it's blocked their view of the shopping center, but I think it may have also blocked their views to some mountains as well. So that's the case. Privacy, I will say that privacy, they're not really close enough to see a lot. They are higher up. So that's, it's to be expected when we put the land uses that close to each other. The project has been designed very intentionally in a way that moves the residential structures as far as possible away from existing housing by placing them as close to the southeast corner of the development site and increasing the spaces between the residential units and the new development. Homelessness, I spoke about. The applicant was very proactive in removing those structures, and I think that has addressed the homeless problem, at least maybe not addressed it, but moved it to another location. There was some concern about well water contamination. The project has been reviewed by our engineering development services team, conditioned appropriately for runoff. Like any other development, it contains water on site, and we rely largely on Mother Nature to take care of some of that infiltration, but I'm going to defer to engineering if there are more questions on that. Property values, this is something that comes up on a regular basis. And what I can say is property values are just not something that we consider in our evaluation. I haven't seen yet where new development has reduced the value of other nearby existing residential sites, but I am not an expert on that. So in terms of density and affordable housing, there was some concern that there's a very high vacancy rate in other affordable housing sites around the city, projects around the city. And there was also concern about other proposed affordable housing projects going up in the area. We are currently, we have accepted applications, although they've been deemed incomplete, for another project nearby on the Ridley Avenue street, which is, I believe, one street to the east or west. So outreach limited to English. I think the applicant addressed that by doing that additional neighborhood meeting. Water demand, our general plan, or our water demand is covered in the general plan build out. It does not mean that even with this bad weather that we don't have a drought. It just means we planned for new development. We need housing as well. I will let, we have the Safe Path to School. It is not through Cowell Lane, but we do have Safe Paths to School. We've talked about pets and signage, complaints about noise where when the project is constructed, one of the conditions of approval for when the project is constructed is that their construction hours will be limited. Typically, we allow 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and I think 8 to 6 on Saturday because of the proximity to existing housing. They have agreed to reduce their construction hours to Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. so as not to interrupt that getting ready for work or dinner hour. And on Saturdays, I'm sorry, I think it's 8 to 6 on Monday through Friday and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with no construction on Sunday or holidays. There was also some environmental issues raised. And I'm sorry, I should have thrown in there California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. Noise, the project is required to remain in compliance with our noise ordinance. In terms of CEQA compliance, which I'll talk about, I think the next slide, the project is exempt, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Noise is required to comply with our noise ordinance. And there are some times during construction where you will hear spikes of noise, louder noises. That is temporary. And that happens with all construction around the city. And there's really no getting around it other than limiting the hours. So construction impacts on wildlife. There's been concern both in terms of the impacts on, say, birds and bats and the critters that are living on the ground and what's going to happen to them, as well as the displacement of critters and what kind of impacts those little guys can have on neighboring residential. And this is something that occurs whenever there's infill development. I know I live next to a site that was filled in next to me, and it's a temporary condition. This is something that there are no conditions, and we don't normally have any conditions. I'm not aware of any project that has been conditioned to protect anybody from that. It goes with the territory. Okay, environmental review. The Aviar Apartments project has been reviewed in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, and it qualifies for a statutory exemption, both in pursuant to the CEQA guidelines, section 15182, which says that it's consistent with a previously adopted specific plan area, and which had a EIR, an environmental impact report certified, and also with government code section 65457, which is promoting affordable housing within priority development areas. What I mentioned earlier is the Association of Bay Area Governments, or as we call them, ABEG, reviewed this project and said that they've confirmed that it is consistent with the Plan Bay Area. So the project is located within that transit priority area, and it's on a parcel that's less than 5 acres. So these are some of the requirements of this this exemption. It's consistent with the City of Santa Rosa's North Station Area Specific Plan, General Plan, and zoning. And then I just mentioned that it's consistent with Plan Bay Area, which was confirmed. So it's substantially surrounded by other urban development. It's within city limits. It doesn't offer any habitat for listed species. Those are protected critters, as well as birds, bats, plant species, etc. So it won't have any significant impacts once constructed for traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality, and it can be served by all public utilities and services, emergency services, which are right now in the area, available in the area. So with that, it is the Planning and Economic Development Department is recommending that the zoning administrator, by resolution, grant design review for the Aviar Apartments development. It's a 36-unit multifamily residential development proposed at 1385 West College Avenue. And if the zoning, and actually, let me please continue with this. For those people that are calling in and can't see the screen, my name, the project planner, is Susie Murray. If you have any questions after the meeting, you can reach me. My telephone number, and I do answer my phone, is 707-543-4348. And you can email me at smurray@srcity.org. And let me spell it, smurray@srcity.org. And that concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions that the zoning administrator may have, or I know the applicant is eager to give their own presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. I appreciate your presentation. It was very thorough, and I don't have any questions at this time. I reserve them to after the public comments. So now it's time for the applicant team to present more information or wish to add to this project. Please raise your hand if you wish to do so, and you'll be recognized. I'm going to see if I can see if there are any. I have Jeff Johnson. His hand is up.
Jeff Johnson will be kicking off the presentation. And because I'm sharing my screen, I think I can mute myself.
And then I see, okay, so I'll rely on the project team to coordinate their presentation. Please commence.
Thank you, Mr. Zoning Administrator. My name is Jeff Johnson. I'm a principal with McKellar-McGowan, the developer of this project. And just want to introduce our team. I'm here with my partner, Chris McKellar, our architect, Kirk Mckinley, our landscape architect, Christine Talbot with Quadriga, civil engineers, James Jensen and Dave Brown from Adobe Engineering, Zach Matley from W-Trans, he's our traffic engineer, Tina Wallace, our land use consultant, and last but not least at all is Sherry Hoffman with Chelsea Investments Corporation, and they are our affordable housing partner on this project. And so we are pleased to be here, and we thank you for your time. And we just want to thank staff and the public for being here and considering our project today. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, the location slide. I just wanted to give a little more detail. I'll try not to repeat what Susie already said. But I want to point out some attributes of this site. We are literally across one street, Cal, as you know, to our east, and there is a very large Safeway shopping center there, obviously within walking distance. That shopping center also hosts a drugstore, a dollar drugstore, a UPS store, restaurants, and other services are there. If you can look sort of bottom left, you'll notice that Finley Community Park is literally, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe it's 2 blocks. Depends on where you start and where you stop, but Finley Community Park with all of its amazing assets are within walking distance of the site. Further, just tiny bit to the left of that, or to the west of that, at Stony Point and West College, there is a very robust transit center for buses in town. There is a transit or a bus route on West College. It is currently eastbound direction, and there is a stop across the street from the project. The project is conditioned also on making room on the southeast corner there for a future bus stop for westbound buses. And we're excited about that. As you also know, and Susie mentioned, the elementary school and Jennings Park are close by. If you can go to the next slide. I'm going to ask Kirk Mckinley and Christine Talbot to talk about site plan, architecture, and landscape architecture. So I don't want to steal thunder here, but I want to point out here that where we back up to or are adjacent to existing residential development, we back off in every respect from the site with parking. And also to the west, not only do you have that setback and the parking there, but you've got a 75-foot PG&E easement. So we're quite far from our buildings, from either our neighbors to the north or our neighbors to the west. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as was mentioned, we are a 100% affordable project. And the great news is that we received our bond allocation just last week. That means we are moving forward with working drawings and going towards building permit, with funding scheduled to occur in June and construction to occur a month after. So we look forward to that. A couple other points that maybe were not mentioned. I did want to say that the street frontages on West College and Cal will be activated with homes and landscaping right on the street. As was mentioned, we are 136 units proposed. I have 117. Susie rounded up for me, so I guess I got 118. But 118 units are allowed by city code in this zone for a market rate project. We are only proposing 18 density bonus units. We could ask for 211 units by state law, which is an 80% density bonus, or up to 234 units by the city code itself. We're not doing that. In addition, state law gives us the right to up to 4 concessions or incentives. Those include things like changing the setbacks, going above the height limit, reduced parking, all kinds of things like that. We are asking for none of those, nor are we asking for any waivers, which is another category of things that affordable housing projects can get. Our building heights are only 32 to 37 feet, all 3 stories. The underlying zone itself allows us to go 45 feet and 4 stories. So we're not doing that. And again, the parking requirement is 136 spaces. We go 43 spaces over that. 25 of those spaces will be designated visitor. The rest of them will be monitored. And we create an additional 17 spaces, which do not factor into those counts, on Cal Road, on the west side of Cal Road. With that, I want to, again, thank you for your time and turn this over to our architect, Kirk Mckinley.
Good evening, everybody. If we could go back to the site plan. Everybody's presentation has not left me much to say, but I'll fill in a couple blanks. One of the things that we've done as a result of having a previously done a project on this site is we know the constraints of the site, and we know where the issues were with the general public around the site previously. So this site plan actually shows the whole site in a different rotation. So if everybody thinks, will think that the north arrow is going on the left-hand side of the sheet, relative to everything that you've seen before in terms of the drawings. But along the eastern side of the site, which is on the bottom side of the sheet, the previous design had a building pushed up 15 feet off that property line. All the buildings, that building has moved as a result of us understanding how the site works from the previous design to facilitate even a larger setback for all of the buildings or the residential development, which is on the western side of the site. So it's improved that whole edge condition relative to privacy, light intrusion, view intrusion, and things of that nature. So we've concentrated all the development on the eastern side of the site, fronting on the eastern side of the site. The streets, Cal Street and West College Street, have the same kind of orientation as the previous project. So the impact on those streets is the same, and it's going to have the same appearance. We had 3-story buildings before, we have 3-story buildings now. The only difference is on the previous project, we had parking underneath a portion of the buildings. We now have the parking on the surface, but the buildings are still the same size, same character. We've actually pulled a lot of the architecture off the the previous design and integrated it into this design as a result of understanding what the public wants. The public previously wanted a more residential look. We applied it to the previous project, and we've taken those same considerations into the new project and implemented them into the design. Also on the north side of the project, those buildings are in the same position that the previous design was. So the improvement is that all of the buildings are pressed away from the local single-family houses, and it increases the benefit of the previous design. In addition to that, most of the drainage that's coming off the site is functioning in the same manner because of our experience on this site with the previous design. So it was very helpful to have done the other project, and we've implemented a lot of consideration into the comments on the other project into this design and actually improved on those. Can we go to the next slide? Next slide. This is the building elevations. We had some of the similar features on the previous design. We had an integration of stucco and wood siding on the buildings. We integrated these sloped roofs to create more of a contemporary farmhouse look on the project. And those elements are consistent with actually the other approved design again. We have two different color palettes that we can work with on the buildings that in order to create diversity on the elevations. And so actually the mass of the buildings, the forms of the buildings are taking a lot of the elements of the previous design and integrating them into this new design. Next slide, please. This is more of a black and white rendition of the drawings. It's a little bit more technical drawing, but you can see with the dimensions on the side there, it's 37 feet tall at the peaks. And actually that's the highest elements of the building. The majority of the building is lower than that 37 feet. Next slide, please. Again, the end elevations, you can actually see the depiction of those sloped elements that you saw previously on the front elevations. They're only a portion of the buildings to create that residential character, so we can make it consistent with the kind of community feel that we've seen throughout the area. Next slide. This is a basic breakup of a typical 24-unit building. We have 6 buildings on site. 5 of them are of this character, and 1 of them has a community center in the building on the ground floor, so that it's just a smaller building, but it still plays off the same kind of concept idea. So this is a 24-unit building. It's got 8 units per floor, and we have a breezeway walkway between each one of these 12-unit complexes, and it's primarily a family project. This has no 2-bedroom units in the project. It's all 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units, which is kind of unusual for a affordable project, at least the ones we have worked on. Chelsea is one of our clients, and we have worked on numerous projects with them, and we've developed a large degree of expertise on this. And so you can see that the floor plans are very, very livable. They're very workable, even though the square footages are 760 square feet and in the 960 square foot range for the 3 bedrooms. But they afford, handicap bathrooms, handicap kitchens, deck areas, storage on the balconies, everything that you would expect to see in a market rate project, just to scale the buildings a little bit smaller. Next slide, please. This is we have one building that's all 2-bedroom units and one building that's all a combination of 3s and 2s. This is the smaller building, which is all 2-bedroom units. But you can see it has the same kind of character as the previous elevations that we showed you. Next slide. Whoops, I was confused. That was a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom building. This is an all 2-bedroom building. You can see it's shorter in nature, but it has the same kind of character as the previous projects. You can also see on the lower elevation, on the left-hand side of the elevation, that's our community space. We actually took out a couple of units there to create the community space that opens out onto the greenbelt areas that we have in the project. Next slide. This is the community building. We house the laundry areas for the individual units here to create this kind of environment where you come down to the community area to use the laundry, and then you interact with the outdoor space, and you interact with the community room to create this this residential character and this kind of family feeling in the overall project. But the community room is 1,800 square feet. It's got computers in it. There's a community space. There's office space for the leasing of the building. There's a little kitchenette for little public parties or things of that nature, and as well as bathrooms and bicycle storage and maintenance and things of that nature. Next slide. This is the going back to the landscape plan, and I'll let Christine Talbot take over from here to describe the landscaping in the community areas that are integrated into the project. Christine?
Thanks, Kirk. Hi, this is Christine Talbot from Quadriga Landscape Architecture. Good evening. And I think building on Kirk's orientation, because we've turned the plan on you, just to remind you that north is to the left. So West College is on the right side of the sheet. I think I'll just focus on some of the things that have changed since design review, and maybe just highlight the site circulation and our approach to the landscape. We've incorporated specifically a good number of trees to provide some mitigation for the trees that were removed. And I understand that there's some additional requests for additional trees in the conditions of approval, and we're going to be working to incorporate the trees on site as much as possible so we can really get some great shade and space for the residents. The perimeter of the property has some taller, more columnar trees for screening to the adjacent residents without providing, too much shade on the north sides of the fence line. We do have, complete street frontage on both West College Avenue and Cowell Lane, so there'll be pedestrian access, as well as bioretention planting and trees. So it'll be a much nicer frontage for people that are walking and using the neighborhood. I think there's three kind of larger community gathering spaces. The one that Kirk was talking about adjacent to the community building is shown in the center of the page. It's kind of an aqua color. We're showing kind of a tot lot play area with seating and gathering adjacent to the community building. So that'll be kind of the main exterior space for play and gathering. And directly above that on the plan, it would be Plan North. There's another area that's highlighted in an aqua dashed line that's intended to be a gathering space for teens with game tables and a place to hang out that has some shade and a little bit of privacy, but not too much. There's views from residents so that kids aren't completely autonomous. We also included a small residence garden on the north side of the property. It still gets good sun and it's a little bit removed. So if it's not always tip-top shape, it's not in the center of the community, but it still provides a space for people to gather and grow food, which is a great amenity. I think some of the comments we heard at design review really related to the open space and how it was organized around the site. So we've moved some of the trash enclosures to really create better seating opportunities and gathering spaces throughout the site for the residents and really push vegetated screening and things like that so that we can provide a nice space for people. Of course, our planting palette is going to be low water use and meet all the requirements for the city. We'll be treating stormwater through a vegetated means on site. I think there's also a mechanical option, and there'll be some safety lighting. We show pole lights on the site, as well as some examples of what the play equipment might be like, and the fencing off to the right, and some imagery, just to give you an idea of what the community might look like. We're interested in creating a nice family residential community. So warm materials and nice soft colors. And I think that the next slide probably will go back to Jeff. Thank you very much.
Well, I just want to thank Kirk and Christine for their presentations, and The team is available to answer any questions. And with that, we close our presentation.
Thank you. I had one quick question. First, you mentioned trash enclosures being moved in response to design review committee comments. Can you show the landscape plan and point out how those were relocated? I couldn't discern that from the map.
Sure. I don't know if we can zoom in, but yeah, we're circled right there. We pulled it away. It was tucked up closer to the building. So we've pulled it out and incorporated more vegetated screening on that left side to provide a nicer space for people to sit. If you can, I don't know if Susie can zoom in at all, probably not, but if you can see that orange rectangle to the north, that's covered bike parking, and directly south of that is a seating area. And so I think before, the trash enclosure was closer to the edge of the parking. And so there was concern that the seat area just looked upon the trash enclosure. So we've made adjustments, adjusted parking around so that we could get more planting adjacent to the seating area.
Okay, so you have one enclosure for the entirety of the complex in that location?
Well, there's one there, and then there's one on the right side.
I'm fiddling with my monitor. Okay, thank you for that. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see that now. Thank you.
All right, yeah.
Okay. That was the only thing I just couldn't follow in the presentation. Thank you. That was it. All right. So now I want to give opportunity for the public in attendance who wish to do so to comment. If you're participating by Zoom, press the hand symbol and you will be recognized. If you're calling in, press *9 and you'll be recognized by your last 4 digits of your phone number. Your public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. So please respect that. We'll put a timer on there so you'll be able to monitor. So if I can ask the recording secretary to start public comments with.
I'm going to ask our applicant team to lower their hands so that it doesn't create confusion when I'm trying to locate those that are raising their hand for public comment. Because we have a large applicant team, so thank you. And
do you want me to call out the names, Kimberly, or shall you just want to take them as you see them?
well, I think first up we were going to hear from Judy and Greg Irvis, and I believe we had 2 members of the public just on one Zoom login, so we wanted to make sure we gave time for each. So let me go ahead and get a prompt to them. This was a request made in advance.
Actually, there are 5 people that I gave Susie 5 names for people to speak. So
I do see, I see that, but there are, I believe 1 or 2 of those names at least is on a different login. So is everybody present with you?
No, everybody's, Greg, I'm Judy Irvis. My husband Greg is with me.
Okay, Judy, can you see the screen with the timer?
I can.
Okay.
So ready, set, go?
Ready, set, go.
Okay.
Yeah.
My husband and I are homeowners on Manhattan Way, just around the corner from the complex. Our biggest concern is there's not enough parking, including the adjoining street, even including the adjoining street, Cowell Road. So people may just drive around the corner and park on Manhattan Way, or even possibly across West College on Borden Villa and Wild Rose. We understand there can be legally 5 people in a 2-bedroom unit, 7 people in a 3-bedroom unit, and according to Burbank Housing, it would not be legal to impose a limit of fewer than what is allowed. The proximity to the JC would make Aviar popular with students, and they would likely all have cars. If half of the 84 2-bedroom units only have 1 car, half have 2 cars, if half of the 52 3-bedroom units have 2 cars and a quarter have 3 cars and a quarter have 4 cars, that's a total of 269 cars needing parking. Including the additional spaces on Carroll Road, there are only 191 spaces, and 25 of those will be visitor parking. Please answer the question, where will these cars park? We understand there's a process of permit parking for residents on our street, but we also understand that those are not enforced on weekends and after work. We drove to 8 different similar sized affordable complexes last month on evenings and weekends. I have the names of the complexes if you'd like me to have them, but every single one we drove through and talked to residents said parking is terrible. There's not enough parking. People park in visitor spaces. People park in no parking places. Street parking fills up, and several people told us there may be 3 or 4 or even 5 cars belonging to tenants in the 3-bedroom apartments, which allow up to 7 people. And I do have a question. I have understood this to be affordable housing, and Susie mentioned the word low income, which I understand is rather different. So I would appreciate some clarification. And if anybody wants the names of the units that we drove through, I'd be happy to provide that. And I'm going to turn it over to my husband, Greg.
One moment, please, and we'll reset the timer. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Greg Urbis, and I live at 1239 Manhattan Way. When we were visiting other affordable complexes, one man told us he parks in street spots with no parking signs so his guests can park closer to his home. We heard comments like, parking is a terrible problem, or I have to drive around and around and around, and I have to walk 5 minutes from the street where I can park. Manhattan Way is less than 5 minutes away from Aviar, so an easy target for overflow parking. We also spoke to a resident in Sendero townhomes, which are market rate. Each unit had 2 parking places, which is nearly double the number of spaces in Aviara. Even with that extra parking, the street the townhomes are on is filled to capacity almost all the time, according to the resident, who also said that there are many roommate situations, so there may be 3 or 4 cars in each of these units. We have friends in San Diego who also visited 2 of the complexes Jeff Johnson gave us the names of. While they appear to be very nice complexes, residents are very frustrated with the parking situation. In the Mesa Verde apartments in San Diego, people said that cars end up in no parking spaces frequently, and residents are very frustrated. We understand that Safeway plans to tow cars parked illegally in their lot, which makes Manhattan Way the next best place for those who cannot find a parking place on site. We know that the developer has a legal right to provide so few parking spaces and could in fact provide even less. But we are asking that he consider additional parking for the good of the community and for the residents who may end up parking a long way from their homes, carrying groceries, children and strollers, many, many things. We know Santa Rosa needs more affordable housing. We're not against it, but we will turn the city into a giant parking lot if these developments are allowed to move forward with such inadequate parking. We feel like our concerns were not taken seriously by the Design Review Board, and we cannot afford to pay $556 to appeal a decision when it seems that decision is a foregone conclusion. Please address directly where you think this overflow parking is going to go. We respectfully ask that the developer be given a continuance to address the issues presented by everyone speaking tonight. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Kimberly, this is Susie. Do you have the list of 5 people?
I do. I'm looking for the next one on here. It looks like Linda Freebear. Linda, can you see the timer on the screen?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I thought my husband was going to go first, but I guess I'm going first. Okay.
I don't I don't see that name as a separate login on the list, but I'll look for it while you're commenting.
Okay, it's David. So anyway, I'm Linda Freebaron. We live at 1341 Manhattan, which is just a little bit south of where New York comes into Manhattan. And if I could share a picture, that would be a picture of a car from October 2018, a minivan driven by a mom on her way to school. She was running late, she was speeding, and she ended up, as she rushed down West College to turn onto Manhattan, she instead ended up even later as her car ended up perpendicular up against a power pole. Thankfully, nobody was hurt seriously. We lost power for a few hours, but it's a real concern, the increased traffic that this new mini units will add. So I'd like to see that is addressed. Perhaps a signal at the corner. Anyway, when our kids would cross Manhattan to walk to school, 25, 30 years ago, we've lived here 33 years. That was a problem then. Cars on their way to school, rushing. And it's even worse now. If Aviar, now I heard you mention that there will be a safe walking access to Helen Lehman that isn't on Cowell, and I'm not sure where that would be, maybe through the easement. But I'd like that question answered. Where is that safe walking path going to be? Just as a quick example, there was not a safe walking path from the North Coast Apartments over to Helen Lehman. This is maybe 15 years ago or so. I was working at the school, and the temporary solution to provide for these students that are within walking distance and who had a crossing guard was to bus them. And it's 15 years later, and that's still the same solution. So hopefully there will be a good solution to let these kids walk what's probably 50 yards from the edge of the complex to the school, to the South School playground. Anyway, that an access would also be good to have, would be good for the residents who are not able to park close by. I would like, well, first of all, I'd like to say that I appreciate that you're not taking advantage of the conditions and the waivers that you could have, and that's good. I appreciate that you've taken into consideration some of the public comment that we've made in the past, and I wish that I had faith that they would be honored and that we'd be listened to. Unfortunately, we've had, my husband will talk about this, we've had several buildings going on in our neighborhood, and we've had promises made that have not been kept. But please prove me wrong and listen to our, especially parking, which is the biggest concern. And I'm out of time, so thank you. I hope that people, not dollars, will be the main thing listened to.
Okay, next up we have, I did locate Dave Freebairn in the participants. So Dave, I'll send you a prompt.
Okay,
Can you
you
see
can
the
hear me?
timer?
I can see the timer. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So as my wife mentioned, we moved on to Manhattan Way 33 years ago. And I should say at the beginning, I think this presentation has been very, very well done. I think you've covered a lot of the concerns, but we, of course, still continue to have some. There have been a lot of changes in the neighborhood since we've been here. Our kids attended Helen Lehman, Comstock, and Piner. And the neighborhood was pretty quiet, but it's now gotten a lot noisier. We've witnessed 4 housing developments just in the time we've been around here. The development on New York, also behind our backyard on Ridley, on Brooklyn Drive, 3 houses south of us, and the most recent, a few houses north of us on Ridley. Whenever we've expressed our concerns at the planning meeting, there were promises made, but not necessarily kept. And each time the building happens, we've had to deal with rats. Most recently, this is about 3 years ago, this was on Ridley, and I had to remove about 17 rats from my house. They were in the garage, in the attic, under the house. All of our insulation had to be removed and replaced. All the items from our garage were removed and either cleansed and sanitized or tossed. We had to throw away food that had been stored in heavy-duty plastic containers and eaten through by the rats. It cost us lots of money, and of course, there's no compensation available. That's the cost of living. But I didn't create the problem, but I had to create the solution. That was extremely frustrating. We realized that there's a housing shortage in our area. There are many projects in progress to help. Just on College, between the freeway and just west of Marlow Stony Point, there will be the new Sage Commons apartments on College between the train tracks in Cleveland that come right up to the sidewalk. The one that we're talking about tonight, and the College Creek apartment complex. These alone will provide several hundred units. We're not saying not in my backyard, but we don't want to ruin the existing neighborhoods while we're in process of adding more housing. Losing a few units in exchange for more parking and less traffic, or building underground or multi-level parking. For example, I thought about the Santa Rosa Junior College and how they resolve their parking with multi-level parking. And it seems like everyone is happy with that. This has been addressed very well by Judy and Greg, and it is our biggest concern, but not our only concern. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And before we move to our next hand in our menu here, I want to mention we do have a phone caller. And so want to let you know that if you'd like to speak, you can press *9 on your phone. And that will raise your hand within the Zoom meeting, and it'll give us an opportunity to get you unmuted. Next up in our menu, we have Steve. Steve, I'm sending a prompt.
There, can you hear me?
We can. Can you see the timer?
I sure can. Thank you very much. Well, there you go. Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. My wife and I and my son, we live on Manhattan, and I kind of agree with the last caller, and we're calling tonight about the increased traffic going up and down Manhattan from the project down to Helen Lehman Elementary School. We see this increased traffic, of course, at around 7:30 and 8 in the morning, when parents are trying to get their kids to school and they're late and they're racing down Manhattan. And of course, when they pick up their children at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and they're, I think, racing to pick them up, and Manhattan just becomes sort of a raceway. It's tough to be out there. It's dangerous to be out there. We were kind of hoping that the developer or the city might find a way to put a gate and a path to the schools. Has been brought up at the north end by using the PG&E easement. I know this hasn't been discussed a lot, but it does seem like an obvious answer to get these kids that will be coming out of this project down to Helen Lehman Elementary School. Otherwise, they're in cars being shot down Manhattan at 50 miles an hour. And it's sort of odd to see this nice easement over there not being used for too much of anything except for PG&E. The traffic studies indicate there was an additional 740 daily trips on West College with the project going in. And College is already a speedway, especially in late afternoons and evenings. So we never see a lot of traffic enforcement, and I know there's lots of reasons for that, but out on College, and everybody's just kind of really just zooming up and down College. It's dangerous to try and turn left onto College from Manhattan, and I know all of us that live on Manhattan, and all the people that probably are taking their kids to the elementary school and coming back up Manhattan. If you come up Manhattan and stop and try and turn left onto College, it's really hard. It's really dangerous. My wife and I we tag team. She's driving, she's looking one way and I'm looking the other way. And then we just say, hit it, and we try and get out onto College. It's very, very difficult and it's dangerous. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We were wondering about, is it, somebody to consider putting a stoplight at Manhattan and College. The traffic survey that was done, we noticed kind of jumped out of this that of all the things this traffic survey did, they never surveyed Manhattan at all. They didn't survey the intersection at Manhattan and College. I don't know how that could have been done. Of all the complaints that we see posted and letters written and discussions and the meetings, and the traffic survey never did Manhattan, never did the intersection of Manhattan and College. It seems kind of crazy that that was never done. It seems like it was kind of left out on purpose. That doesn't make sense to me. That's it. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Genevieve Albers. Genevieve, I've sent a prompt.
Yes, hello.
Hi, can you see the timer on the screen?
I can.
Okay.
I would just like to take a moment to thank Mr. Commissioner Gustafson and Mr. Johnson, Mr. McKinley, and the numerous other people involved in this project. I think you've all done a terrific job on your presentation. I have two concerns. I don't think anyone can say with a straight face that this is adequate parking for a development of this size. And the impacts of that are far reaching, not just in the immediate vicinity. They may well have been within their rights, but we all know that it is not adequate. Second, I understand that several heritage oaks, hundreds of years old, will be displaced by this project. And while they may be replanting other oaks, nothing can replace those old growth oaks. There are ways to accommodate them and move sidewalks around the trunks of these trees, as has been done in many other places in this town. For instance, the junior college, Montgomery Village neighborhood, it's part of the heritage and history and character of our town. It's super important for climate mitigation, which everyone in Santa Rosa knows is of paramount importance. I beseech Mr. McKinley and Mr. McGowan to rethink this and accommodate these old growth oaks as much as possible and leave them for the enjoyment of the future citizens of the city and residents of their development. Everyone has been very gracious about thanking them for the restraint they've shown and the respect they've shown in the limitations that they did not maximize. They could have done more, they could have gotten more. And that's all well and good, but let's not make any mistake. They're here making money and taking it out of this community with this development. This is not charity on their behalf. They're still making a lot of money on this project, and it won't be, that money isn't even in this community. So good on you for doing something. I would say you're doing slightly more than the minimum. And I'm disappointed that more Santa Rosans aren't here to say that you could do better. You should save these trees. You should address this parking concerns and these traffic concerns. And I hope that you reconsider. I yield my time.
Thank you. And let's see. Next up, we have N. Matei. I'm going to send a prompt.
Can you hear me?
We can. Can you see the timer?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Natalie Matei. I'm Director of Real Estate for Safeway. I represent the 6 Safeway stores in Santa Rosa, including store number 2457, immediately next door to the proposed Aviar project. Safeway supports affordable housing as it's a much needed resource for our customers, employees, and the community as a whole. With respect to Aviara, Safeway has technical concerns that need to be addressed in order for us to fully support the project. As background, Safeway shared its concerns with the applicant and the city starting in August 2021. After we forwarded the truck template showing impacts on Cal to the applicant stopped communicating with us despite stating that it would at both the community meeting and DRB. Of special interest, however, in an October 27th, 2021 email, which is in the public record, from planner Susie Murray to Gabe Osborne and Cleve Gurney with city engineering, Ms. Murray stated that Safeway had a, quote, valid concern regarding its truck delivery concerns. Earlier tonight, Mr. Osborne commented that Cal is considered a minor street and predominantly used for the residential at the end of the street. Cal is predominantly used to service the shopping center. The 3 small houses at the end of the street likely make up less than 2% of the trips on Cal. There are rarely cars parked on Cal, perhaps an occasional motorhome or trailer. Therefore, stating that Safeway delivery trucks are subsidiary to the new discretionary offsite improvements is misguided. Lastly, if Safeway's trucks are challenged, I question whether fire truck access would be challenged as well, as a fire truck template has not been run. The solution to these safety concerns is not that challenging. The parking spaces that are proposed on the west side of Cal can be relocated on Cal. The right-of-way can be widened, reducing the landscape setback. We're open to options. We just like the concerns addressed, as to date, both our concerns and the neighbors' concerns have not been addressed. We respectfully request that they be so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I want to just mention briefly here, I do see Teresa Hughes' hand raised, but I believe you were previously identified as a member of the applicant team, and it's not appropriate for the applicant team to be commenting during public comment. So we'll hold off on that.
If I might, Kimberly, I do believe that I might be wrong, but Teresa Hughes might be with Generation Housing. And if that is the case, she is not part of the applicant team. And I would ask for clarification on that before you don't hear her. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, we did
excuse me. I unfortunately got booted off the Zoom feed there for probably 30 seconds, maybe less. So I missed any comments that may have been made after Ms. Materi's presentation. I came in when Mr. Johnson was speaking.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we were just trying to make sure we clarified who was part of the applicant team and who was a part of the public. And because Ms. Hughes did a sound check prior to the meeting, I thought she was part of the applicant team. So if you want to go ahead with your public comment, Teresa, can you see the timer on the screen?
Yeah, I see it's being reset. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And Teresa, just because I let that happen, are you part of Generation Housing?
No, I'm not. I am
Oh,
actually a tenant on Cowell Lane.
Okay.
I've been there for a couple of years, and I'm just a private tenant, and I haven't heard anyone else from Cowell Lane speak up tonight, but my concern is, I'm there every day. My concern is with the removal of the 2 heritage live oaks that are on the east side. They line Cowell Lane. Tree number 901 is marked for removal. It's got a diameter of over 48 inches. This tree has a massive span, and I would argue a heritage, and it should be removed. It should not be removed. It should be preserved. I've sent a letter to the mayor, to every member of city council. And we have a lot to gain with these housing units. Everyone knows that we need housing in Santa Rosa. I don't have any dispute there. I've heard a lot of concerns about parking, and that's very real. I've lived in low-income housing myself. I know the impact that can have. But at this point, we've got 2, one in particular, beautiful heritage trees that require no additional water or resources on that level. We've also got a precedent for these trees being worked around in our community on Franklin near the rural cemetery. There's actually a beautiful example that I've sent to every member of city council, where there's a small planting area that is 10 feet across. It's got the sidewalk at 5.5 feet that runs on one side, and then Franklin Avenue, which is only 24 feet wide. And I would say that Franklin sees a whole lot more traffic than Cowell Lane. And as a resident on Cowell Lane, you know, it's got a sign that says private road. It's not a private road. Susie Murray pointed that out herself. Yet the city has completely forgotten about it. The residents haven't even really been mentioned here. We buy our own gravel to keep that road and distribute it ourselves to keep that road in shape. And no one's ever really looked to take care of it before. And now you're going to take away these trees that add dignity to our neighborhood. And, you know, it's a modest neighborhood. You can bet for sure that, you know, if they were going to take the oak tree down over on McGowan, those neighbors in that neighborhood, that upscale neighborhood, would hear none of it. And I'm asking that your landscaper, your developer, who are absolutely out to make a profit on this, reconsider. There is a precedent. These trees can be worked around, and it looks to me that there's plenty of space to work around it. And I think it would be a great gift to the community as a whole to integrate these trees, to allow them to provide shade and not demand water. I know there's compensatory plantings, and I think that's great. I'm glad that's a policy. But if you look around at our city streets, many of the ornamental trees are not maintained. They're suffering from the drought, and you know, they don't live. And those oak trees
Ms.
are
Hughes,
survivors.
you please need to, you've gone beyond your 3 minutes, and in fairness, I think we need to stop and allow someone else.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other member of the public that wishes to speak at this point? And I'll lower my hand.
We do have Jen Close, and she is designated that she's from Generation Housing.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you see the timer on the screen?
So this is actually Stephanie Picard Bowen with Generation Housing.
Oh, okay.
Good evening. Like I said, my name is Stephanie Picard Bowen, and I'm the Operations and Development Director for Generation Housing, where we advocate for more diverse and more affordable housing. Generation Housing is pleased to offer a strong endorsement of the Aviar project. Its immediate proximity to the adjacent Safeway, nearby Finley and Jennings parks, as well as intermediate access to a main thoroughfare across Santa Rosa via the West College artery, makes this location ideal for residential multifamily development. Additionally, on-site amenities such as the stated community center, which offers access to computers, as well as the community garden, tot lot, and benches, among so many other things, are critical to ensuring our city is community-centric and focused on creating healthy, vibrant, and sustainable lifestyles for all. Furthermore, as a designated priority development area outlined in the City of Santa Rosa General Plan, this development ensures we align with City Council priorities to promote denser infill projects on vacant or underutilized lots. This in turn encourages a more walkable, bicycle-friendly community that generates co-benefits of climate mitigation. While we understand that the surrounding community has registered concerns related to overflow parking, many of which have been voiced here tonight, we do want to highlight that the developer has committed to coordinating with the City of Santa Rosa to ensure strict enforcement of parking on their property. Moreover, climate change is here and requires us to take immediate action. We need to start to reevaluate and change our one-to-one relationships with and reliance on cars. Government regulations are beginning to incentivize an evolution away from our current level of car use. Local planning decisions should do the same. We need to be planning for and building for the future, and Aviara is an opportunity to begin realizing that sustainable vision. We strongly encourage you, the zoning administrator, to immediately approve this project and continue engaging with the developer on opportunities to maximize safety and explore additional impact approaches for minimizing impacts to the surrounding community. As always, thank you for your service and have a great evening.
Thank you. And can you repeat your name again? I missed it at the onset of your presentation.
Sure, it's Stephanie Picard Bowen.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, is there any other member of the public present this evening that wishes to comment? Remember, if you're on Zoom, press the hand icon, or if you're on the phone, press *9 and you'll be recognized. Okay, seeing none, I'll give another moment here. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Okay, thank you all. Very informative, and I do have a couple questions. I'll ask the project team here. The traffic study was completed. Concerns about traffic have been raised, in particular on Manhattan Avenue. Could the team's traffic consultant please speak generally about the methodology for the traffic analysis and how trips from this project to and from this project would be distributed out onto the street? And those would be vehicle trips.
Good evening, Mr. Zoning Administrator. This is Zach Matley with W-Trans in Santa Rosa. We completed the traffic impact study. I probably should preface by indicating that the study area and the study intersections and roadways that are included in the traffic study, we prepare a memorandum that is forwarded to the city's Department of Transportation and Public Works for concurrence and making sure that we're capturing the locations that need to be captured. Generally, that does include major intersections, particularly signals within a half mile of the project site. So the Manhattan intersection would not be included in that. That said, if there is a location that is particularly going to have a lot of project related traffic, it can be added, but we did not deem that to be appropriate. The city, nor did the city express a concern with the need to focus on that particular intersection. This project would add approximately during, and again, traffic studies focus on AM and PM peak hour operation. It would add about or a maximum of 18 vehicle trips onto College Avenue, but those would be going, and this is College Avenue to the west of the project site. So those will be passing through the Manhattan College intersection, but they're almost all through movements. And so those actually have very little impact on the actual traffic operation. With respect to traffic on Manhattan itself, there would likely be, maybe 5 to 6 AM peak hour trips associated with school drop-offs for the elementary school, so a fairly low number. And we wouldn't really expect any during the critical PM peak hour. There's just not really a big reason for the people to do that. We do have, in this case, there are continuous sidewalk networks between the project site and the elementary school that is approximately a quarter-mile walking distance. So we certainly would hope that the majority of those trips will be made by walking and biking by any of the new students that this particular development would generate. We recognize that's not always the case, but again, the amount of vehicle traffic generated on Manhattan from this particular development would be expected to be quite low.
Now, you mentioned the sidewalks, and I did have a question related to that. Was it evaluated, or in terms of, were they evaluated in terms of safe walking path to school? Are the residents of this project site, children attending the school, able to use those sidewalks? Is there a continuous sidewalk connection between the apartments and the school?
That is correct. There is a continuous sidewalk network between the project and the school. And there, again, an additional benefit is that those students wouldn't even need to be required to cross any major streets in order to do so.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if you're the person or if I should call upon Rob Sprinkle or Gabe, whether the regarding the turning movements, truck path travel through the site, if there are, if you've been able to analyze the turning movement exhibit that was submitted with Ms. Materi's comment letter. Can you comment on whether the future roadway width improvements with the parallel parking on the west side of Cowell will actually accommodate turning movements of trucks in and out of the site?
Yeah, this is Rob Sprinkle, City Santa Rosa traffic engineer with the Department of Public Works. We did our own analysis of that turning movement with our turning templates and with the additional width that's being added to the street, and by aligning the truck in furthermore to the west than was in the letter from Safeway. The truck turning movement is actually able to make it without crossing over any of the driveway curb returns. And also to follow up on the access related to the fire department, we do have turning templates that verify that the fire department can also make those turning movements into the Safeway parking lot with the new configuration.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a question for Ms. Materi. Can you describe how deliveries are made to Safeway today? Where do they come? What type of trucks are they? When you look at the building site, do they go to the front or do they go to the back? And you would have to raise your hand to be recognized. Okay, I don't think
So we're looking for I'm sorry,
You're looking for N. Matei.
Matei,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you
Oh, great.
describe deliveries? Do they all go to the front or do they go to the back? Or do they go both places?
Our preference is for all deliveries to go to the back, to the loading dock. That is where what we call the ICC, the receiving delivery clerk, checks in and scans the deliveries. So for inventory control, having all deliveries go through the loading dock is the preferred location. Perhaps there's a sporadic FedEx that will come through the front. I've spoken with our drivers and with our store operators, and accessing West College, turning right on Cowell, then turning right into the shopping center is the preferred path of travel of the drivers. They view that as a smoother right-hand turn from College onto Cowell than taking Clover, which they view as too tight and too narrow and a more dangerous maneuver. We receive about 2 to 3 18-wheelers per day, 7 days a week. 2 to 3 could be from Safeway, from our Tracy Distribution Center in the Central Valley, or there can be a Coke or Pepsi 18-wheeler. The remaining deliveries that we receive are like the bread truck or the Red Bull truck, which can range anywhere, depending on the day, between about 12 and 18 deliveries per day. Is it Mr. Sprinkles, the city traffic engineer, would be able to share the templates that he's saying that he's run? I did not see those as part of the presentation tonight. We would be more than happy to evaluate that.
Okay, well, so I just wanted you to characterize where you're taking deliveries. It sounds like it's happening. Preferred is to the rear and you do have deliveries to the front. And I do recognize there are other uses or activities on the site that might also have trips or trucks coming through there. Thank you. I just want a little clarification on that.
I want to make sure, Mr. Is it pronounced Gustafsson?
Yeah, Gustafson. Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to be very clear that our policy is to take deliveries through the loading dock in the rear. So when you say we're taking them also through the front, it's truly a sporadic one-off. I would imagine that other tenants in the shopping center, especially the small shop tenants, are going through their front doors.
Okay. So you would, I mean, by taking the deliveries from the rear and not the front, you're really not making that left turning movement onto Cowell frequently. It's the exception, not the rule.
No. We enter on westbound on West College and turn right northbound onto Cowell.
Oh, got it. Thank you. And then you go all the way through the site and then circle through.
Correct.
Okay, right. Thank you. I'd like to turn my attention now to parking. A lot of comments made regarding parking. So I more have not so much a question, but rather a comment. And it was stated, observed earlier, that this project is providing more than the minimum required, but it's not adequate. And I understand the concern of the neighborhood. This is an issue that we face throughout the city as we're intensifying development according to our planned residential, according to what is planned for throughout the city, including our residential areas. And I have to say here that and note, underscore that the project exceeds the amount of parking available and also provides more public parking on the street, which is going to be available to residents as well as visitors to the shopping center or whomever comes to the area. That is truly public parking. Because this project fulfills the regulatory requirement, we are not in a position to demand more. The potential for spillover parking may exist, but I think we will find in time in projects that are located in situations as this, that people will right-size their dependence on vehicles with the opportunities to travel or be mobile without cars, be able to walk to the grocery store, to be able to use public facilities such as the nearby park. So we're in a difficult time of transition with respect to our sort of history of reliance on parking wherever we wish to go, and the need to change our behavior or our reliance on vehicles and for other means of mobility. And so it's something that is a kind of issue that we constantly deal with in the community, where we have to make trade-offs to fulfill goals. And in this case, provide more housing in settings where we have good transportation networks and good supporting land uses. So that's a comment on my part regarding the parking issue. And I know it won't satisfy many, but it's really the direction that we've made a policy commitment here at the city, also statewide, with affordable housing development requirements that we're implementing here. I do have a question for the project team regarding oak tree removal. Can you comment on that? I know your landscape plan shows a lot of tree replacements there. Did you consider protecting any of the trees? And if you did, can you a bit explain why these trees need to be removed if they cannot be accommodated within the proposed development footprint? And I member from the project team that wishes to address that question, that'd be great.
This is Christine Talbot. I can start. I'm the landscape architect.
And can I ask you, Kimberly, can you share the landscape plan so we all have a visual of what we're discussing here?
Actually, if Susie could share it, that would be
excellent. And Susie, if you can point out where these trees are, that would be great.
Bear with me a sec. I got to get back to that that screen.
Thank you.
Great. So as you can see, the ghost of the oak tree just off site, the trees are really affected by the street widening. We did look at ways to try and save both those oak trees. And with the street dimension, it wasn't possible. So I think maybe Adobe or James from Adobe might have additional background on that, but I know that we did look at ways that we might be able to retain those trees, but I think with the dimension of the street, it wasn't possible. I agree that generally you can move around them with a sidewalk, but these would be in the drive aisle and in the parking area adjacent. You can see, especially the most northern one is really right in the drive aisle.
I can see that. And this is in the land area that was, is it already in public right-of-way? Or is this area that you're dedicating to the public right-of-way to complete the street cross-section?
I will let Adobe answer that. I believe it's part of the right-of-way, but I could be incorrect.
Okay. If yeah, if you could just answer that question, that'd be great. And recognize Dave Brown.
David, I sent you a prompt here. If you respond to that, it should enable your sound.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, there's a 36-inch oak tree that's close to 2/3 of the way up Cowell. That's right inside the right of way and would be about 5 feet from the new face of curb. I'm not an arborist, but I would suspect that the road widening is going to probably impact some of the roots along the Cowell Road side of the tree, unless the curb face was warped around that tree in some respect. The 24-inch oak tree that's within the driveway approach on the northerly end is into the right of way quite a ways and probably couldn't be saved with the widening of the road unless, of course, the driveway approach was relocated and the road was narrowed significantly, probably about 8 feet or so.
Yeah, thank you. I see that that tree is lined up right in the middle of that access at the north end. Okay, thank you for that. And then with respect to tree protection, yeah, it's heartbreaking to see such beautiful specimens go, but it is, as noted here, they are in the right of way. It's ultimately to serve this property and the other properties, the right of way needs to be improved into its proposed or drawn cross section, and to try to change that curb sidewalk at the north end and shift the driveway, it would profoundly impact this project. And you know, we do have tree replacement requirements and conditions that are set on this permit to account for that. And you know, it's not going to really do much to soften the blow of losing those specimens, but I think we need to again realize this is a type of trade-off that we make as the community grows, and as parcels like this, which are remnant rural parcels in the middle of an urban area that now provide us an opportunity to build a housing that is vitally needed. So that again is one of those trade-offs that we need to make, and conditions of approval here account for that, to try to remedy that the best way we can. And I'll just comment that the landscape plan that is put forward, I think will really create a project, help integrate the project into that setting that exists along West College. The trees along the street and along Cowell will soften the 3-story buildings in a way that really will help to create closure to what I think is going to become a much more vibrant neighborhood center with this development on the west side. It's a real logical development at this time, and will reinforce that area, that neighborhood center, as a focal point in the community in a very graceful and accommodating way. Let's see. We did have some concerns about noise and rats, and I think in part those are really related to development as it occurs. We know those are transitory issues or effects, and once the development's in place, we really won't have that problem in the surrounding area. So in total, I just really want to underscore here, this proposal coming back, version 2, really does demonstrate how a project can, through design iteration, really do a great job of adjusting and accommodating and better fitting the community. And we're very fortunate, I think, in this case, that the project team took a look at the site anew, and I believe has come up with a plan that is very accommodating. It was pointed out repeatedly, they're well within the development standards. They are exercising density bonus well below what they are entitled to as of right by the state. I might add, it's not 35%, 50%. Well, actually, with 100% affordability, the state law for density bonus now says they could double the number of units that would otherwise be allowed by the general plan. But here they're at, well under that, below 20% of that. I think that the development team is really looking at a project that will work for the people that live there. They're not going to maximize it out to get a program that has the greatest return on investment. They're looking for and have put forward to us a project that provides needed housing, that fits the site comfortably, that honors the residential areas to the west and to the north. And quite frankly, it does capitalize on the commercial neighborhood area to the east in a synergistic good way. So I did read all the comment letters and reviewed the application packet and staff's resolution, and the findings are appropriate. I do want to ask the project planner to make sure that I'm taking action on the correct resolution. I know there were some adjustments, and in the agenda or on our website, we have resolution 1 revised 12/14/2021. which has some corrected conditions and language. Ms. Murray, if you can just confirm that and just highlight the differences for me and people attending, what that resolution did, I'd appreciate it.
Right. I don't have the resolution up. First, I will say that, yes, you have the accurate one.
Okay.
What the changes were, they actually had to do with parking, also had to do with, I can pull up the resolution and summarize, but before I do that, I would like to, there was one question that went unanswered, one clarification that was requested, and that was to clarify the difference between affordable and low-income housing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what I want to say is affordable housing is, it kind of encompasses a group of extremely low, very low, low, and moderately priced rental or for sale units. And they all are considered affordable housing, and projects that have that affordable housing component, such as this one, especially when there's a density bonus. I mean, we cannot approve them as affordable housing projects without locking them into a 55-year deed restriction that says they will remain affordable for that duration. And that was another one of the projects that was, another one of the conditions that was edited for this had to do with the affordable housing component. So if you hold on one sec.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I have it handy, Susie, if that's easier.
Oh, that would be great. Can you bring the red line up, actually?
Sure.
Now, keep in mind, everybody watching, the red line also corrects some of my typos.
Thank you for sharing your red line. Does Susie need to take down her hand?
Oh,
sorry. There we go.
Okay, so there was some clarification on this first finding on this finding on page 1. I'm sorry, whereas, where we need to separate the one. There are 135 units that will be designated for affordable and 1 unit designated for an on-site manager. I will say it's a minimum of 135 units that will be deed restricted. Okay, and again, these are just revisions that address that. If you want to go down to the next page. There's some on this page. Oops, can you go? Yeah, and there where we start with the conditions, we added some regulations change as time goes by. So we kind of left an option for things to change. So a real good example of that are fees, development fees that used to be required at time of building permit submittal. And now we let them, they can pay them later. They can be deferred. So this additional language allows changes like that. And then there was just a date revision. Here, that number 4 is the language that we added for the density bonus. Scroll down a little bit, during periods of construction. Oh, we added a requirement that the applicant will post a sign during the entire construction period that is basically a direct line to the general contractor, foreman, or designee that will address any complaints. And this is in hopes that neighbors can work with the developer before getting the city involved in these types of complaints. So you can scroll down a little bit further. Here, this is the parking language that was added in. Whoops, go back, stop. Here, the condition initially requested unbundled parking, but the developer provided a very reasonable explanation why this was actually a better policy, and I agree with it, that this is where we added the requirement for a parking placard, if you will, for each unit, and reserved parking spaces for visitors with a 48-hour maximum parking limit. And I'm having power surges at my house right now, so I apologize if all of a sudden I disappear. Final inspections. Again, this is just allowing the out for, say, allowing occupancy before the landscaping is finished, which is something that happens, especially with housing right now. It does not mean by any means that landscaping will not be completed, and it could be something else as well. It must be approved by the chief building official. I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, Susie, for walking us through that. All right. So it is my pleasure, after considering all the information provided, including staff's presentation, the applicant's presentation, and testimony provided by the public, upon review of all the materials with this application, to approve the project subject to resolution number 1, revised 12/14/2021. This project is approved subject to those findings and conditions of approval. Anyone who wishes to appeal the project may do so by filing an appeal with the project planner by end of the day, December 27th. With that, I adjourn the meeting of the zoning administrator, December 15th, 2021. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting.